Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 15th of August, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, and I'm delighted that back in the studio with me is Mike Robinson. So you're refreshed and ready to go, Mike?
No.
Okay, well, the sun is shining here in Plymouth, and we've got some pretty good reports from other people. Pembrokeshire is looking warm and sunny. It's a lovely day in Glasgow. So I think on the weather front, at least, things are looking promising, but not so good if you're on the wrong end of a police taser.
No, so this is, well, the police said that they were concerned for the safety of an individual in a house, so they went in and tasered him. This was West Mercia Police, and they said that officers responded to a report for the concern for the safety of an individual at 1:30 a.m. this morning at an address in Telford. Upon arrival, Taser was deployed, and a 48-year-old man who subsequently received medical attention was pronounced dead at approximately 3 a.m. So he's been identified as Dalian Atkinson, ex-Aston Villa footballer.
Well, of course, Mike, we got this situation where the taser is a lethal weapon. It's always been a lethal weapon. If people research on the internet, have a look at Birmingham Heartlands Hospital, you should find documentation relating to the doctor who was used to actually qualify that the taser was safe to use except in a number of circumstances. If it hit you in the eye, if it hit you in the groin, if it hit you in a major artery. And of course, Devon and Cornwall police excelled themselves by using a taser on a man who'd soaked himself in petrol. And then they were quite surprised when he burst into flames and subsequently died. So a lethal weapon, nothing to do with a safe weapon for stunning the bad guys. This is a very dangerous weapon. And of course, we're seeing the police want more and more of these things.
Right. Apologies if my audio's a little low. I think we've got problems again with Mike. Right. Let's move on. We've got fear. Now, just before I went on holiday, Brian, my Dutch friends who met us when we were away, saying that they had delays at their airport because Schiphol Airport had some kind of security alert at it, and we've got the same thing going on again today. Here we've got the terminal at Nice Airport. We can put this up, please, Theo. The terminal at Nice Airport evacuated over suspicious luggage. What does that mean? Does that mean somebody saw a bag that they didn't like the colour of and they decided to raise it with security? Not really sure. And also at JFK Airport earlier today, allegedly a gunshots heard, and so the whole place shut down for a while. That, of course, turned out to be nothing, as did the Schiphol event, as did the Nice event. But clearly the intention is to create tension amongst travellers.
Indeed, and incidents which we'll say 5 or 10 years ago would have been dealt with by a common sense approach. What is actually happening? What evidence is there? What is the risk? Now, of course, it's all too easy for them to escalate everything on the basis that there is apparently this high-level terrorist threat for whatever terrorist group they're now calling it. And I believe you're going to be talking about a name change a little bit later.
Indeed.
So what are our police up to? Well, when they're not tasering people and killing them, of course, the next thing for the police to do is to be spying on the public. And at a time when apparently we're short of money, here's the headline. So Scotland Yard ploughs 2 million into new thought police unit to snoop down on web users and hunt down trolls. Now, this article really says it all in the headline because, of course, we're short of money for anything that's good, but we've got no problems with money when it comes to getting the police to spy. And what are the police doing? Well, they're setting up yet another unit to police social media because apparently people have been saying some rather nasty things over social media, and this requires immediate policing. And of course, it's now perfectly possible for somebody to be given a 2-year jail sentence for coming up with some sort of hate statement over social media. So we'll just say, well, of course, the Met Police in particular can't catch the high-level child abusers. That's far too difficult for them. But if somebody's had a glass of wine too many and said something unpleasant over social media, well, they've got a team in place to do this. Of course, what's happening here, Mike, as we're going to be seeing, is that we are in a transformation. We are losing any form of democracy or pretense of democracy in Britain. And what is being installed by salami slices is a police state authority. And if you're going to have a police state, you've got to be able to spy on people to the lowest level. So last week we were talking about yet more teams of police volunteers. Devon and Cornwall Police saying they needed members of the public to come and drive them from presumably crime scene to crime scene or police station to police station. And those members of the public were also going to be used for other police-related duties, to which we say an embryonic Stasi state spying system coming in.
Right, financial stuff then. FTSE 100 at record highs, apparently. And this is being described as the Brexit boom. Well, the stock market has been at this level before, of course. But why is this happening now? Well, we've just had the announcement of interest rate cut and also more quantitative easing. So plenty going on from the Bank of England, plenty of plunge protection going on. In the meantime, the financial system in exactly the same state that it was several weeks ago. So nothing's changed.
Well, this can't be right, surely, Mike, because I've been reading things over the weekend which say that clearly there's been financial problems as a result of Brexit, and now we've got a Brexit boom. So who's telling the truth?
No one.
No one.
No one telling the truth. And least of all, Bank Underground here. Now, we have mentioned this website before. This is the blog of the Bank of England, and they're talking about the deposit insurance scheme, which is in place to protect our deposits should there be a bank failure. And what they're saying is, should the costs of insuring deposits up to £75,000 be made clearer, they say deposit insurance schemes guard against bank runs by reducing or removing individual depositors' incentives to withdraw their funds if they believe their bank to be in trouble. They help protect depositors, but they risk also protecting risky bank business models by removing depositors' incentives to avoid riskier banks. And they make the point that the financial crisis, which began in the late 2000s, had prompted authorities, they say, across the world to increase deposit insurance limits. And they make the point that in the US, the limit jumped from $100,000 to $250,000, and that the EU made the threshold €100,000, or its national currency equivalent, and that they made this mandatory for all 27 members. Now, they make this interesting point here that this €100,000 limit, this threshold, is 5 times the previous minimum requirement of €20,000. And they make the point that it's 4 times the GDP of every person in the EU. So where is this money going to come from? I mean, we've been making this point for quite a number of months, but this article really highlights it. Where is this money going to come from? Should there be a major bank failure? Because we're already in debt to many times GDP. So where's this extra money going to come from?
Created out of nothing?
It's not going to be created. We're going to find our assets being stripped, and that's what this is about, really. So, but anyway, they go on to say that that perhaps a direct risk-based deposit tax should be payable by insured depositors. So they're going to tax us for having insurance on our deposits.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And they say that perhaps banks should be required to prominently display in marketing material how much they pay make this have this insurance cover, and that might make things clearer for people and help them decide which are the riskier banks, because of course the levy that the banks pay is based on the perceived amount of risk from the insurance companies.
So presumably you don't want to be with Deutsche Bank.
Indeed, but they claim that this is going to improve the competition between banks, which we know doesn't really exist because it's a cartel.
Yeah. So mimicking of the power supply industry as well, in fact.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good piece of news here. Now, your first reaction was that Russia did it. But the headline here is that DC Leaks, the sort of similar website to Wikileaks, has published thousands of documents from Soros, George Soros-related organizations, mainly the Open Society Foundation. And they're saying that this includes hundreds of internal documents from many of Soros groups, work plans, strategies, priorities, other activities by Soros, including reports on European elections, migration, and asylum in Europe, and US security experts, according to RT at least, were blaming this on Russian hackers.
Russian hackers, I just watched what Russia has been saying about Mr. Soros, and obviously Russia is deeply suspicious of what George Soros has been up to. And if we look at the colour revolutions and his hand in the background, paying for all of these organisations, Open Society and the non-government organisations, Russia's been throwing these people out of Russia. What would Putin be doing? I think he would have some of his best intelligence services having a look into Mr. Soros's affairs. So whether it is Russia or not, I don't know, but it would make sense to me. We've got a few comments that Mike's mic is a bit difficult to hear. We seem to have a bit of a problem on that, so you have to bear with us. I think there is still sound coming from Mr. Robinson, but you have to listen carefully. George Soros, of course, is running all of these organisations, and he's running the organisations in the West. What is his objective? To overthrow common democracy, such as it is. He's operating it in the Middle East and Eastern Europe in order to take control of nation states. But I got some fascinating information out of one single email that was sent through. So let's have a look at the email that was sent to me. Here we are. It says Tech UK announces open data events with Cabinet Office. Initially, I thought that this was recent material. I missed that it said there Monday, the 21st of July, 2014. But what I was particularly intrigued with, we had open data. That immediately said to me George Soros somewhere in it. And we had the Cabinet Office, known for its transparency, or maybe not. So let's take a little bit of time to see where this trail leads us. And I think my key message is that this is what can come out of good research by one member of UK column supporters, one member of the public who is looking in the right area. Let's just see what can come out. So this is where it led to, the Open Data Unconference. And the person who sent the email to me said they'd picked up on the Newspeak, to which we say, wherever you see Newspeak, you're looking at new government. And what is an unconference? Well, I didn't know what it was, so I phoned up Untech to see what they had to say. And I learnt that an unconference means that people arrive in a room. There's no proper structure to what they're going to do. They simply meet and chat together. And as somebody said to me earlier this morning, presumably there's no minutes, there's no structure. It's a meeting that took place, but it's difficult to prove. I don't know whether you'd like to add to that, Mike, because you found a little bit of that information. Well, what else can we get from this? Here it is. Instead of the Cabinet Office, we've now got into the Cabinet Office's transparency team. And of course, Francis Maude MP was the Tory minister responsible for transparency. Total oxymoron here, but Cabinet Office and transparency. And then down at the bottom, we've got a transparency team that's working with unconferences to help improve the way our society works. Now, I hope everybody can understand what I'm talking about, but stay with me. So where does this lead? Well, open data is going to lead us to this gentleman, Professor Sir Nigel Shadbolt. And what do we know about him? Well, he was originally appointed along with Sir Tim Berners-Lee as information advisor to the UK government. And this has led to the release of many thousands of public sector data sets as open data. And in 2010, he was appointed by the coalition government to the UK Public Sector Transparency Board, which oversaw the continued release of the data. So thousands of public data sets. This is a vast amount of data, Mike, presumably about every part of our lives. So it's stuff to do with tax, it's stuff to do with NHS, it's everywhere. If we can pop that one back up on screen, please, Theo. Bring in the next bit here. He gives us some more information. He's chairman and co-founder of the Open Data Institute, based in London. And he's looking at open data supporting innovation, training and research. But he goes on to say that he was founder of the company Garlic Limited, and Garlic was awarded the technology pioneer status by the Davos World Economic Forum. So this man is in with the major players, and just before we lose that off the screen, we'll highlight this bit as well. In 2011, Garlic itself was acquired by Experian Limited. So it seems to me that we've got a man. Is he independent, Mike? Do you think, in any shape or form? Probably not. He's hoovering up data. That data is now being put through to people who can make a profit for that data. But apparently this man is a part of government transparency. So there we go. Well, where can this take us? Let's have a look at the My Data programme. And Mr. Shadbolt notes that the agenda was about giving consumers power over their consumer data that have been collected by suppliers of goods and services. So it seems to me what's been happening here is that public data has become his data in order for companies to make profit from it.
Right. I thought the Data Protection Act protected people's data.
Well, not if you're an independent person working in unconventions, presumably.
Right. So what's this about?
Well, this takes us into something which is really phenomenal. So let's follow on through. This is the Public Sector Transparency Board connected to the Cabinet Office. Highlighted there is Professor Shadbolt. But I was interested as well what we had to say down at the bottom here. Let's bring that up on screen. Here we are. Francis Maud opened the meeting and welcomed all the attendees. Now, this is going back to 2012, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. So, current progress, we've got Gavin Starks, Chief Executive Officer of the Open Data Institute, discussed the progress ODI had made so far, talked about the significance of open data and how ODI had a key role to play in helping data releases reach their potential. I think that's a profit-making potential, Mike. When we're talking about data reaching its potential, it's nothing to do with helping the public. So step in this lady in the Open Government Partnership Forum. Sophia Oliver, the Deputy Director of the Transparency Team, discussed the chairmanship. They needed an independent forum, and I couldn't help but notice that they needed an independent chair, which the board members were going to think about and organise. So we can relax here because the government is open. We've got transparency, we've got openness, we've got the releasing of public data, all by people who seem to have appointed themselves, Mike.
So what open data actually is availability of government data to corporate interests.
Absolutely.
Now, whenever the Data Protection Act first made its appearance, I speculated about whether this was there to protect people's individual data or whether, in fact, it was there to provide a register of data for future use. And we seem to be seeing this move in that direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's happening at astonishing speed. Well, it's always good to have a look at the people. So let's bring in Sophia. and encourage you to go and have a look at her Twitter page, because there's not a lot on it, but she is almost boasting like a schoolgirl that she's now into her new job and how exciting it's been to be led astray by a transparency team photo shoot. So we're in safe hands there. And also part of the Twitter circuit was this interesting diagram. Now, I don't know whether I'm alone in this, but it was some statistics on the Brexit vote. But if you can see in the bottom right of your screen, the maps of UK have been distorted as part of the so-called presentation of the data on the vote. I found something unpleasant about this, but maybe that's my personal take. Well, let's move into the meat of it with UK open government. And here we go. Now, I take it that everybody in our audience today has heard of UK open government. I hadn't, but it's there. And it's a coalition of active citizens and civil society organisations committed to making government work better for people through increased transparency, participation and accountability. It mobilises and coordinates civil society to effectively advocate for open government reforms, and it works with government to identify, develop and implement the UK's commitments under the Global Open Government Partnership. So this is nothing to do with the government of UK, this is to do with global governance. But I'd like to reassure you, if I can just pop this on that particular screen, here we are. It's all about transparency, participation and accountability. So we can relax because government is open and everything's okay. And this is where it leads us to, the UK Open Government Civil Society Network. And let's put in some details. We've got a 9-member steering group, and I had a look down through these, and I thought, Mike, this is exceptionally interesting because these are the NGOs, these are the unaccountable charities that some of the UK column writers have been warning us about in the rise of participatory democracy.
Absolutely. So we've got Democratise, we've got the Democratic Society, International Budget Partnership, NI Open Government Network, Scotland Open Government Network, the Omidyar Network, Transparency International, I believe that's Soros, Practical Participation.
Yeah.
So who gets to participate in this new form of government?
Well, everybody apart from the public, because they don't even realise this is going on. Now, we just put a little bit of infographics in here, I think it's known as, to see how it works. So we start off with the UK open government, and then through we go with these organisations. And if you call them up on screen, so you can have a look at each one. Now, this one, which I've starred with a nice little satanic star, is that very quickly we're led into another area where there's a special collaboration amongst individuals north of the border to see what the new form of government in Scotland should be. Now, I wasn't aware that we were having discussions on major constitutional change within Scotland, within the SNP's work, but now we can suddenly find it here. Public are not involved, Mike, as you've pointed out. This is all the organisations. So on it goes, and if people like to capture this screen, they can then go and research these organisations themselves. These are all the ones that Mike's just listed for you. And this network gets deeper and deeper and deeper as you look at the organisations that fund each of these board members. And of course, what we can say is at the end of the day, any form of pretense of democracy through Westminster is out. And we have a 9-organisation board driving 700 different organisations which are beavering away to change the whole democratic constitutional structure in UK. This is subversion, Mike. It's being done on the background, on the back of so-called transformation. And a gentleman told me this morning that it was more or less common knowledge in Westminster that Francis Maude and other MPs had said that actually the civil service was a block on getting Conservative policy through, and therefore the civil service was going to be totally changed, leading to the transformation into this new participatory part of what is big society, I think.
So this is a pretty dangerous situation. We've got big data. Now, big data is sold as being transparency. Big data produces data sets which are so big that the average human being cannot process them. So it can only be people with money that are able to process this data. And the other aspect is the participatory democracy aspect. Those 9 organizations and other vested interests are getting to define, are getting to participate in democracy. This is not participatory democracy in the sense of every human being being entitled to participate or being encouraged to participate.
Yeah.
In fact, we're being discouraged from participating through various mechanisms, and these organizations are being encouraged to participate. They have vested interests.
Well, they've got vested interest in both directions, because if you go into political direction, of course, you can find our old friend Demos in the background. Demos leading through to the Young Foundation, leading through to George Soros ultimately. And we've also got the founder of eBay involved, because apparently he's advising on how we can use huge amounts of money to empower community people to change their own society. So everything is in here: big corporate money, dangerous political agenda, and then the use of so-called social networks, social entrepreneurial networks, in order to put this hive mind together. So there we are. That's what came out of just one email. So what we'd like to say is, if we've got viewers and listeners that can pick up on these organizations, let's have a look at who's really behind each and every one, who funds them, and we can start to pull apart this very dangerous spider's web.
Right. This evening then, Ian Crane back in the studio for Humanity versus Insanity. He will be speaking to Russ Burridge, who's a technical designer and independent researcher. He's going to be talking about changing realities, alternate realities rather, and particularly Brexit, and the fact that we don't seem to be having one. And he's also going to be talking about Pokemon Go. And the information that he has on that is pretty spectacular, apparently. And then Fracking Nightmare at 9 o'clock, as usual. Lung disease and cancer, plus the fracking lottery. And so join us for that at 7:30 this evening, ukcolumn.org/live. Now, Russia has just released some video footage of its new aircraft, the T-50. This is fascinating aircraft, the 5th generation fighter jet, the new 5th generation fighter jet. Some Russians complaining about the cost of it. It's costing a whole $50 million per aircraft, Brian. That's a fraction of what the F-35 is costing, and yet it has superior maneuverability. It has 30% higher speed, and it can travel 2,000 miles further. So how come we can't do that?
Well, do you mean we as in Britain?
Or the West?
Well, if we take Britain, the answer is because all of our skills base has been destroyed by successive British governments, whether they're Labour or Conservative. And of course, the aircraft industry, which should have had, I'm deliberately going to use this word, creative competition, the aircraft industry has been undermined and then broken up till we've only got 1 or 2 parts left. So there's no proper competition in the aircraft industry. And if they don't get the orders, they can't follow on through with the skills base. America, I think something different is going on in America. I think the American armed forces are now starting to experience just utter corruption within the military procurement system, where this is about pumping billions of dollars into Lockheed Martin for the benefit of that company, and they're not really interested in the United States Navy or Air Force getting equipment which is worth anything. It's another form of subversion, I think, going on in the States. But if you want to undermine the US military power base, of course, the first thing you've got to degrade is the performance of the carriers, and new generation aircraft are a way of doing that.
Yes. Right. Well, in the meantime, Syria and Aleppo continues, and this is a bit embarrassing, apparently. That's awkward. Why Washington cheering Al-Qaeda-linked heroes in Aleppo. This is a Sputnik article, and what they're making the point that that Obama and his administration, have been outed as supporting Al-Nusra Front. We don't have to worry, though, because Al-Nusra Front has changed its name. It's now called the Syrian Conquest Front, and apparently it has renounced its affiliation with Al-Qaeda. And so, although it's embarrassing, we can probably forget about it.
Well, hang on, Mike, because if it's renounced its association with Al-Qaeda, that means originally it did have an association with Al-Qaeda.
That's right.
So when conservative politician Brooks Newmark stated publicly he'd been talking with General Idris of the Free Syrian Army on the Turkish border, and Brooks Newmark clearly said that, ultimately the Free Syrian Army was linked with Al-Nusra, what he was really saying is that he'd been meeting up with a team linked through to Al-Qaeda.
Yes.
But not to worry, because they've now said, well, we're not really Al-Qaeda.
Well, indeed, and of course,
good terrorists.
That's right.
Yeah,
and we have, it is generally accepted now that we have the West has been funding and arming non-Jihadist Salafist groups, whatever that means, because of course these are all linked and they're all jihadist, really.
Yeah.
Yes, but Aleppo, a serious problem there, and who's getting the blame for it? Well, of course, it is the Assad regime, and Boris Johnson has made a comment. He had quite a bit to say, actually. He said, when a tragedy on the scale of the Syrian conflict persists for so long, there's a risk that it becomes the new norm. But we must challenge that mindset and not become inured in the desperate suffering of millions across Syria just because the conflict there has become so intractable and difficult to solve. Recently, the situation in Aleppo has deteriorated following weeks of siege conditions imposed by the regime, with a significant increase in airstrikes and the horrific targeting of medical facilities. Over 2 million residents are faced with dangerously low supplies of food, and so on. And he goes on to say that the international community risks failing the Syrian people if we do not do more to avert further devastation and tragedy. What he means, of course, is that the devastation and tragedy is falling on the heads of the tame terrorists that we've just been discussing.
Yeah, it is so tricky to pin these people down. Good terrorists, bad terrorists, ISIS, IS, Al-Nusra, Daesh.
They're not Al-Nusra anymore.
Ah, okay. There we are.
Anyway, but so to get up to date with what's going on in Aleppo, if you haven't heard last night's Sunday Wire program, you were on it. But Vanessa Beeley, Abdo Haddad from Syria were on the program as well. That is one that is a must listen.
It was, riveting is the correct description, I think, because of course these are people talking from the reality of Syria. This is not some distance report. People on the ground talking about what was happening. And at one point, while Vanessa Beeley was speaking, there was some break in her conversation because there were mortar rounds dropping in the distance. But what were these two speakers saying? That, of course, the West is absolutely not being told the truth about the sheer horrors of what's going on inside Syria as a result of Western intervention. And they were also particularly talking about the propaganda coming out of the mouths of Western journalists who've been boasting that they've been in Syria alongside terrorist groups, of course, good terrorists in this case. But they were then crowing that on this occasion they'd been back into Syria under government permits put out by President Assad. And Vanessa Beeley in particular said, well, of course, this is really disgusting journalism, because Assad is desperate to try and get some of the true facts out about what's happening in Syria. And these journalists were simply enjoying the finest hotels and being shepherded around. So brilliant reports. And if you've got the time, do listen to Patrick Henningson's Sunday Wire.
Boris Johnson hasn't just been speaking about Syria, he's also been talking about Yemen. And I just wanted to pull out this quote because it really is disgusting. He said, "I'm seriously concerned about the actions being taken by elements of the Houthis, the General People's Congress and allies in defiance of the Yemeni constitution and the UN process, and encourage all parties not to take any action that undermines the possibility of peace." He didn't at any stage during his statement on Yemen say anything about the absolute atrocities committed by Saudi Arabia using weapons bought from Britain and the United States, including cluster bombs. So Boris is back to type, lying through his teeth and misrepresenting everything he can get his mitts on.
A very dangerous man.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll just say, have a look at this article, which is extremely well written. The headline says it all. Britain not officially at war, but fully engaged on the front line of deadly war zones. And those are the things listed. I should have put a title in there.
You should have.
I know, yeah. Never mind. We get caught out sometimes. Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, North Africa, Yemen, Europe. And of course, in other locations, the British government is busy murdering people by the use of drones. So these are presumably terrorists that somebody in Whitehall has decided is a terrorist, but a bad terrorist, Mike. They can be simply murdered with no recourse to Parliament, no debate. So this is a particularly powerful article. Encourage people to have a look at this and to reflect on the fact that we have no debate in Westminster relating to the use of British military overseas, not to advise foreign armies, foreign military, but to actually be there helping the fighting on the front line. Did you consent to it? Did I consent to it? Did we consent to it? I don't remember doing so, but this is what Theresa May's Conservative government thinks is acceptable.
Remember that Obama was given the Peace Prize almost as soon as he became president. He is now, in the last couple of months, achieved the record for the longest-serving war president. Because he's been at war for the longest period of time of any US president. Of course, there was that call to have his Nobel Peace Prize revoked as a result of that statistic. I'd be interested if somebody had any idea if this current administration, or if we take the coalition and this current administration, whether that makes this the longest period of time that Britain has been at war. I suspect not, because we've been around longer and we've committed more atrocities over the decades.
Well, probably somebody who quote the 100 Years' War with the French. There we are. That was a form of Brexit, apparently. Well, if you're concerned about the state of the country, of course, the Home Secretary is not going to be sorting it out for us. We just like to point out that we've still got no response from Home Secretary Rudd on the Met child abuse whistleblower. Basically, they were speaking to us at the end of last week, and they wanted to know at what time Mr. Penning is mentioned in the audio, to which we responded, you really should be interested in the little girl dead in the gutter. And this is the last that we've heard of the media team. Now, on this occasion, although I can be quite tough on media teams, I have to say I think that the Home Office media team has been acting in good faith, but it's quite clear that behind the scenes, senior Home Office officials are running extremely scared of the information that's come out of the Metropolitan Police whistleblower.
So they're looking to gather information with a view to reputation management, perhaps?
Reputation management is the thing, Mike. We're not interested in children, as was described, topped up with disease as a result of the sexual abuse they'd endured. We're not interested in the children dead in the gutter. What we really need to do is to find out who knows what about Mr. Penning so that the waters can be calmed. I did put some of these points to one of the organisations involved in the new open democratic government, one of these agencies, and they got a little bit squeamish with me. But they did finally admit it was difficult to see how the British government could be trusted on any subject if it was prepared to cover up the murder and abuse of children. So maybe there's a little bit of a rabbit running back through the tunnels of that open government network. Well, that brings us to the end of today's programme. If you haven't ordered your UK column T-shirt, we believe that the new grey is very stylish. Is that correct, Mike?
Absolutely.
And
so Patrick said.
Patrick says yes, particularly stylish UK column T-shirt. So if you haven't got one yet, perhaps you might consider buying one. And thank you very much to the people who have taken on a subscription and made us some donations over the last few days. We can only do what we do with your help and support. That's it for today. Great to have you back, Mike. Makes a big difference. And we'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.